Good morning and welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Joe Taylor. This morning, another in the ongoing series of programs presented by the Regional Early Learning Resource Center. The program, through the Northwest Institute of Research, oversees a grant from the Office of Child Development and Early Learning at the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services and the Department of Education. The goal of the program is to improve the outcomes for young children as they prepare for school. John Poza from the Early Learning Resource Center is the host of the program and is with us throughout the series and is with us right now. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Joe. This morning, I'm so pleased to welcome Jessica Lindsay. And Jessica is a director of curriculum, instruction, and assessment at the Brookville Area School District for grades K through 12. And I'm going to have Jessica talk a little bit about the Title I program, the federal program that is also important for funding kids who really need it throughout the country and particularly in most of our school districts. So welcome to the program, Jessica.
Good morning.
Good morning. First of all, I just wanted to let our listeners know who may not really be familiar with Title I. Title I is, in fact, the largest federal aid program for public schools in the United States. It's originated under President Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty with his Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which began in 1965. It was a landmark educational bill passed during Johnson's Great Society, changed the funding of school districts from a local level to a national responsibility. Title I provides federal programs to schools with high percentages of low-income students. These funds pay for extra educational services to help at-risk students achieve and succeed regardless of any disadvantages through no fault of their own. And hence the reason why Title I is so critically important. Just from your standpoint in the Brookville School District, I know the minimum, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but to qualify for Title I federal funding, a school district has to have at least 40%, is that correct, of children that come from families that are at or below the poverty level?
Yes, you could be technically lower, but in order to be school-wide, you have to have that amount.
Right, right. And typically, Title I funding actually is tends to be more on the elementary school level. Isn't that correct?
Actually, under ESSA, Title I funds are encouraged to be used K through 12 to address any student's needs.
Right. But typically, and I'm just going to let's just use Brookville as an example. Are there more Title I funds that are used in elementary or high school?
In the Brookville Area School District, we actually use all of our funds, K-6. Our 3 elementary buildings are Title I buildings. And therefore, since they have the highest percentages of free and reduced, that's where we spend our funds.
I see. So that's another clarification I wanted to ask you about. So the amount is by building, not by actual district. Is that correct?
Correct. We get one total allocation from the state, and then based on our free and reduced percentages, then the amounts are divided up to the schools. The school with the highest amount of poverty should be receiving the majority of the funds.
Right. Now, here's going to dig a little bit deeper into the woods here. Title I obviously is federal funding. Obviously, schools also get state funding, local funding through tax revenue, etc. How is it determined, like in a Title I classroom or situation, how that funding can be mixed? Does it have to be all Title I? Can it be a mixture? How is that actually determined?
Well, in the past, we were something considered targeted assistance. And in that case, the Title I funds could only be spent on students that were identified as needed based on whatever criteria we had set up.
Right.
This past year, we went school-wide, and therefore those Title I funds are able to be used more broadly for any student in the school that would demonstrate a need. And those needs are kind of determined on a school-wide plan. And to form that school-wide plan, we look at all different components, pieces of data. We incorporate the parents, we incorporate the teachers, and whatever they feel the need is how the funds are expended. Now, here in the Brookville School District, most of our funding goes for more staff, which enables us to provide more small group intervention, remediational instruction.
Right. And when you say staff, because schools specifically have Title I teachers, correct? I mean, these are teachers who are funded partly through federal Title I funds who work specifically with that population of students, correct?
Yes, we have teachers that have the reading specialist certification because right now we are Title I reading only.
Right.
So we have reading specialists in each of our elementary buildings, and they work with the students that are identified as a need, and then they also kind of progress monitor all of the other students in the building because they have that specialty background.
Just to clarify, does a child necessarily, or his or her family, have to be below a certain income level to receive the benefits of Title I?
No, they do not. Any student in any of our elementary buildings actually work with all of our Title I teachers and our Title I aides.
Right.
It's just to give them a little bit more of a solid foundation in order to build upon those skills later.
Right, and I think that's probably one of the things that maybe a general audience was not familiar with, that Title I actually is utilized for an entire student population, but the amount is based on specifically, the percentage of those kids who come from those families. Just tell us a little bit about what are the things that, contrary to what you would typically use instructional funding for that comes from the state, what are the differences between what Title I can fund on the federal level and what state funding funds?
Well, if you're looking at Title I funds specifically,
yes.
For us, because we went school-wide, anything that we demonstrate a need or that is included in the school-wide plan by all of our stakeholders, we can use funding for. Like I said, ours is mostly used to provide the additional staff. Another component is the family and community engagement. So we hold different activities in which we incorporate the family, the community. We invite Head Start parents, preschool parents. So we use that funding to also incorporate that in for that early learning and early components.
In Brookville, now you mentioned the elementary schools are reading only in terms of the Title I. Just to kind of like piggyback on that, what are some of the other, like in other school districts, what are there other areas where the Title I funding is used in other areas?
In other school districts, some of the school districts also have Title I math, where they provide remediation and enrichment, small groups for that math component also. However, you still receive the same amount of funding. So even if you offer Title I reading and Title I math, you still get that same allocation from the state.
Okay.
So we've just chosen to concentrate ours on the reading and not try to divert those funds and split them so that they wouldn't be useful.
Okay.
Are the benefits of Title I confined strictly to the school building, or are they at all used in things that would benefit kids outside of the regular school day, the regular school building?
It would depend what it is. There are funds that can be used outside of the school building. We also have to set aside funds for any students that might be homeless or any student that would be a foster student, and we can provide, for their basic needs with those funds with Title I and other things that may appear or come up.
Right, and there's also...
So it could also be used for We run a summer literacy program outside of the normal school year, so we do use those funds for that. Funding could also be used for after-school tutoring if you put a program like that in place. So it can be used for some different things as long as it's in the school-wide plan.
Right. Okay, now I'm going to ask you about, because there was a change from No Child Left Behind in 2001 to under the Obama administration. It's now Every Student Succeeds Act, or what we commonly call ESSA. How did the funding or the program, if at all, change when we shifted federally from No Child Left Behind to ESSA?
ESSA really opened up the door and allows you to really concentrate on all students at all different ages and all different levels. Where under No Child Left Behind, it was really more targeted at the younger students.
Right. And I wanted to ask you, assessment, that's under your bailiwick, and assessment is obviously, and data collection is huge when it comes to how Title I funds are used and how successful it is with the students. Can you give us a little glimpse as to, when you look at a classroom and individual students, what do you have to monitor in terms of the responsibilities in Title I?
Well, it really depends on the different grade levels. We have different screenings that we do, and then based on those screenings, if a child shows up with a deficit or a gap or shows a need for something, then we do some more in-depth screeners and diagnostics with them to really narrow down what is their individual need. And then as teachers work with the students, they're required to keep learning logs that show the students' progress and their needs as they go. And then we also do some benchmark assessments throughout the school year. So we adjust groups based on the different benchmarks and the different reading logs that the teacher's keeping the data on, whether it's a skill, whether it's fluency, whether it's reading comprehension. We really have to keep all of that documentation just to show we are addressing each individual student, because each individual student has different needs. They not all have the same thing. So we have to keep that data to show we are providing the intervention or the enrichment that's appropriate for that individual student.
Right. And boy, I can't emphasize enough, you well know this about literacy and reading, and it's so important, especially in the early elementary years and continuing, because, if you cannot read and you cannot fully comprehend what you're reading and apply it to all your other subjects, it becomes difficult. The numbers, as I'm looking at Title I, nationwide, 50,000 public schools. That's 14.9 million students, 64% of students nationwide, from as early as preschool to high school, receive Title I funds. However, most of the students served are in grades 1 through 6, while another 12% are in preschool and kindergarten. An astounding 58% of all public schools in the U.S. receive Title I funding. Concerning preschool and kindergarten, 12%. Of course, this show is about quality early learning, and we emphasize, the preparation and how important it is to be ready for a child to actually enter school. Talk a little bit more about how Title I in Brookville, for instance, is used in those early, like preschool and kindergarten. Is it much different than maybe in another district?
I think it's pretty similar,
okay.
From what I've heard. We do have some transition plans for our preschoolers that come into kindergarten, that we meet with the parents and we meet with the teachers of the preschool. We bring the preschools in to tour the kindergarten building during the school day. We have kindergarten registration where we do, our screenings and just kind of introduce them to the building. And then for kindergarten, we provide some extra staff members. So that allows us to provide more small groups to those kindergartners to address their individual needs, because they all come in at such varying levels.
Right.
And it's really difficult in a class of 20 kindergartners to really identify each one of those students' needs and work on which each individual student needs. So we provide that additional staffing that pulls those small groups within those classrooms a few different times of the day, and that's really where the bulk of our funds in our kindergarten building are spent.
Right. Now, we touched on it about how important parental involvement is in effect and how that factors into Title I funding. Schools receiving Title I funding must implement programs, activities, and procedures that include and promote parental involvement in school-related activities. What does the protocol say, for instance, in Brookville? I mean, what are some of the things? Because, you know, there used to be a program, I don't even know if it's still in existence through Head Start, called Even Start, that the parents actively are involved in with their child. Is that still taking place, at least within the Brookville district?
For our parent engagement, we have, our parents come in as stakeholders. We talk to them and deliver information through our PTO, which is our PASS meeting.
Right.
We also have 2 family community engagement evenings during the school year in which we bring parents in. This year we had the parents where we did make and take activities during that night so that they were introduced to an activity that they could do at home to promote literacy. And during that, we invited the Head Start or pre-Ks in the area to attend that night. And then we also include them we have some workshops we did this year, and we did them at 2 different times during the day. We had some morning workshops and some afternoon workshops, just about strategies that can use in the home, information about the curriculum, the different standards we have, what assessments look like, what assessments we actually use in Brookville, and how to interpret those and help their students in the home.
And I know we
do a lot of different little pieces throughout the year.
Right. And just so our folks know, our listeners, PATHS, we use a lot of acronyms on this program. And just to clarify, that stands for Parents and Teachers Helping Students. So that's the name of the sort of the PTO for the Brookville district. And boy, how critical it is, as you mentioned, Jess, having Head Start representatives there and other, preschool organizations, because, these are where a lot of those kiddos who are not yet in school, they're going to eventually be going to Brookville. And it's so important in that transition process, getting to know those preschool teachers and Head Start teachers who currently have those children, so that there is a better understanding they can get to know those children a lot better. And it certainly helps when they enter school. I wanted to ask you now, this may be, there's probably not that many schools, at least in our region of the state. But how is a Title I school different from a school that does not receive Title I funds?
Well, it just basically provides you with more funding, which allows you more staffing, and it also makes you more aware to have reading specialists on your staff.
Right.
So we have those specialized people that have that literacy background and that knowledge on how to deliver that instruction to those students that's going to be beneficial. So it's basically that wealth of knowledge that you have access and makes you aware to bring those people into your school and allows you to bring those people into your school and have them work with those students and share ideas with teachers and be collaborative.
Yeah, now, and then I want to touch on the accountability. We talked a little bit about that in terms of accountability and assessment in the use of the effectiveness of the use of Title I funds. State departments review eligibility funding every year. That requires states to measure we refer to, here's another acronym, AYP, Adequate Yearly Progress for schools receiving Title I, with the goal of all students reaching the proficient level on reading and language arts, and for those who choose to apply it to mathematics as well. This was going back, I think it actually started AYP going back to the 2013-14 school year, but it even went before that. But states must define minimum levels of improvement as measured by standardized tests chosen by the state. So can you give us a little glimpse about, and I don't want to put you too much on the spot, but in terms of the AYP targets, how do the Title I students factor into those targets? Is it something that's looked at separately? Is it looked at as the whole of the district? How exactly is that done?
In the past, our Title I students, when we were under the targeted criteria, they were looked at separately.
Okay.
Because they were the only students receiving those services. They were the only ones that could work with that Title I teacher, because they're the only ones Title I funds could be spent on. Since we have gone school-wide this year, they're not specifically taken out as a subgroup. It's looking at more of a whole picture piece, and where are we at with all of our students, and how are they all progressing. So we look at each individual student and look at each individual student's growth. Now, for accountability for Title I, in the grant itself, you have to state a performance goal. And each year, when you submit your final expenditure report, you have to say, did you meet this goal? Was this goal not met? And if it was not met, what are you going to do to meet this goal? So with yearly progress in meeting that PLOS growth through state assessment, that's kind of separate piece for school accountability as a whole. And then within the Title I application, in regards to the Title I funding, you have to have that performance goal tied to academic performance, which is really where you're picking like a targeted population to work with and finding what works with them.
So interesting. And I guess that was a good thing, right? Not having to separate the two in terms of the accountability factor for AYP.
Correct.
Yeah. Jess, I'll tell you, this has been so interesting. The Title I program, I've learned a lot, and I'm on our school board in Brookville, and I've always wanted to have a further discussion about Title I because I know how really critical it is. I know you do a fantastic job with Brookville, and I'm proud to say that Brookville is a Title I school. And I tell you, our students are definitely benefiting from this program. We have Jessica Lindsay, our K-12 principal at the Brookville Area School District, responsible for curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Thank you so much for being on the program, Jessica. Hope to have you back again.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's our program for today. We'll be back in 2 weeks at this same time. In the meantime, you can go online to learn more at papromiseforchildren.com. For John Poza and the Early Learning Resource Center, I'm Joe Taylor. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.